I look at models, when I think about models, I think about there are three classic models. The first classic model is the one that I am a card-carrying member of, I'm a fan of. I've plied my trade in, I've run agencies in, I've run sales floors in, the classic traditional 360 model, where of course your recruiter does everything from start to finish, from business development to sourcing, to the process, to seeing it through, to the placement, to the post-placement and moving onwards therein. There is then what I call the double 180, which is where we have someone that's totally focused on business development on the front end of that model, and we have someone totally focused on resourcing on the back end of that model. And we need to find both of those guys, the right roles in our business, the right success factors, the right non-negotiables, the right remuneration, the right targets and everything else. Becoming more and more popular right now. And I'm seeing more and more people transition and trend towards this. To give you an idea, our little business at Ludlow Search, we apply this, we do this model ourselves. The third model is the classic American sales pod, the classic American sales organization taking us back perhaps to, I guess, the 90s, maybe even the 80s, if you like, which we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence in, which I'm seeing more people wanting to talk about, which I'm having more conversations about of late. So the triple 120 effectively looks like, for those of you guys that do tech sales or understand tech sales, you'll have an SDR, so a sales development representative, i.e. a lead generation specialist. That lead generation specialist, their role will be consistently to provide our business development specialist with sales information for our business development specialist to then go and book meetings and bring solutions over the line. And the third 120 is, of course, our resource function that fills the briefs and the products and the bundles and the projects and the SOWs that our business development person then wins for us. So for me, these are the three classics. Now, what I'd like to do is perhaps pass some commentary around these three classics and perhaps give you what I feel might be the best model that we can look at today. So if we first of all look at some key considerations in terms of the things that you need to think about. You need to think about not only with the model that you're running, but you also need to think about it if you decide to change the current model that you have and move towards something different. Your first key consideration is perhaps an area that Gary and I don't always agree on, and we'll probably do a PG tips on it soon, but it's how niche your consultants are. I'm still a massive fan in most of the models I'm going to talk to you about our consultants being laser focused niche, subject matter experts. Now, we can loosen that up if someone's just a business development person. When I say just, and I don't mean that to demean that person, I mean, if their sole focus is business development and they're selling projects and products, they need more solutions led than niche led. You need to consider what you sell as an organization. So if you were to look at 100% of your current net fee income, what would the percentages be between contingent and competitive roles and between retained, SOW, bundle, productized, whatever you want to call it? Where does the needle sit? So for me, the further our model sits on the contingent side of the fence, the more we lend ourselves to 360. If we're looking to progress more into a solutions-led, a retained-led, an SOW-led, a package-led world, then I think we need to look at our model very, very closely, because 360 for me will die on the vine in those markets, in those agencies. You need to think about how many consultants you have, what are your growth plans, what are your headcount plans, what is your trajectory north in terms of consultants that you will be bringing on board. So what's your current headcount and where's that going? Your model will, of course, play a part in that. Can you drive and manage change? Have you got the infrastructure to drive and manage change? Have you got the skill set to drive and manage change? Have you got the people to allow you and help you drive and manage change? Can you move towards an as is and to be a reactive and proactive environment, which will allow you to change models right now? And is your business fit for change? Change takes cash. Change takes industrialized process. Change takes infrastructure. Are you able to change your model right now if you need to? Or what work do you need to do to be able to let you change your model moving forward? So let's first of all look at our old mate 360. Let's look at the pros of 360 first of all. Let's look to facilitate some discussion at the end of my conversation here with you on my presentation. The pros of 360 is, I would suggest that nearly everyone on this call, it's the model that they know best. It's great for spot business. It's great for contingent business. It's great for ones and twos. And we still know there are markets where we can be hugely profitable right now, selling ones and twos, selling individuals, selling placements rather than solution, selling arms and legs rather than products. We also know that with a 360 model, we can easily bolt a delivery team on the back end when we get very, very successful. I say delivery, I shouldn't use the word really. We can easily bolt a resourcing team on the back end of a 360 business should we need to at any stage. It's a very, very simple headcount transition north to bolt resource function on the back of a 360 floor. I've done it, I've seen it, it can still work. Our cons are, my concern is that in modern day recruitment, in modern day sourcing, modern day talent, whatever you want to call us this week, that we run the risk of our people falling betwixt and between. In other words, proper business development is a full-time job, as is proper headhunting, sourcing, the production of great talent into our roles and bundles. So if we continue with 360 and we want to evolve into an organization that sells large scale, then do we run the risk of our people falling betwixt and between resourcing and business development and not doing either properly? The challenge that I see when I go, and you know that I've been to over 100 agencies in the last 5 years, that most recruitment businesses don't drive niches and non-negotiables well enough to do 360 properly. We're a little bit laissez-faire in terms of day-to-day behaviours and the way that our people operate. We sometimes become, unless we drive a very, very tight ship from a 360 perspective, I don't believe we allow our sales floors to fulfil their ultimate potential. Judy, did you want to add something here, mate? I'd seen you come off mute.
There's a couple of things here. 360 was brilliant. I know I earned my first few millions based on the 360 model. In today's world, it's too hard to find candidates who want to work with us who are doing a 360 role. It's too hard to get them. It takes too long to develop them. And if you think about the toolkit that they've got, they need to be, we struggle with people even doing the basic minimum in terms of admin. We need them to use systems and processes to the nth degree. It's a way more complex world than it has ever been. And we're asking people to sell products and solutions for the majority of the time. Any business that's trying to survive doing ones and twos, as the market, if it twitches, and it's probably likely to in some way, shape or form, they will fail. It's an easy business to literally just switch off. You're not embedded, you're not sticky as a customer. The other thing that you mentioned was about niche. My favorite niche is for businesses who are helping people go through transformation change, be it it's any of the 4 areas of change, which is making money, saving money, compliance, or these days pivoting. If you can highlight those organizations and be a bit more agnostic in terms of exactly what you do for them, pitching commercially to senior business leaders, you'll win higher value stuff. I just think that's where the world of the future modern recruitment talent solution sits. It's funny that if we were to go and win a piece of business and give it to a recruiter and they only get paid 70%, if that piece of business is just a piece of business, it's a project or a parcel of work, and we don't piss up every lamppost, which is BD people open up an account, so a customer in its entirety. Great example, if someone were to open up IBM, if it's one project at IBM, why the fuck should that BD person be responsible for, or get a tickle for every other project that comes from IBM? But if you say fill that role in the 360 role, you can get paid 70% of it. Anything else you find with that customer, now we've opened up, we've done the ice breaking, and you get paid 100%. I think it's an absolute no-brainer. But what you just need to do is govern it. So I think the days of 360, if you're still doing 360 and you're struggling to find staff, you're struggling to get over 10, or you're struggling to get people doing 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, you're still stuck on 1 or 1.5 deals, it's because your model's wrong.
My last point on 360 as well is it seems harder now, and it is harder now, to hire and bring 360 people through than it's ever been. When I visit you, wherever you are, when I come and see you, or whether we're on Zoom or we're having a chat, one of the biggest challenges that a vast majority of the businesses are telling me that it's becoming harder and harder to grow on your own in a 360 model. The second model that I'd like to give a little bit more detail to is our friend, the double 180. Let's first of all look at the pros of our double 180. Of course, it lends itself to multiple hire because you have specialists in each area, and effectively the role of a specialist in business development is selling solution and solving problems rather than selling bodies. Therefore, when you're selling multiple hire, when you're selling bundle, you're therefore also giving yourself the opportunity to facilitate not just growth in revenue, but growth in headcount. As Gigi's just mentioned there, that effectively what you're looking at is you're looking at your business development people selling against the 4 areas of change in any organisation. At no stage there did he mention niche. They don't have to be as niche. By the way, I still believe that your resources, your resourcing staff have to be more niche, but that's another story. The roles themselves become more specialist. There are definitive lines of engagement between what people do. Therefore, we are breeding specialists in a certain role rather than 360 consultants who are perhaps great at BD and not as great at resourcing, or vice versa. So those are our pros in terms of the double 180. What are our cons? If you're not there at the moment, this represents change in an already choppy marketplace. And I'd mentioned earlier on that if we're not able and we don't understand how to make change internally, then we run the risk, of course, of potential revenue dip in transition. Now, what happens as well, of course, is your hiring strategy can become more complex because you're now hiring for 2 very, very different and very, very definitive roles. In other words, you're hiring for 2 very, very different types of people. So if we consider the double 180 model, those are my considerations for you right now in terms of pros and cons and what you should be looking at if you are looking to transition into double 180, which I would suggest is the trend, which I would suggest is happening, which I would suggest is most popular in our RDLC community.
This is the model that people should be using, I feel. It gives the business the opportunity to win more higher value, higher quality business, which is absolutely ideal. So you might have a whole load of customers today, and think about the businesses. So last time we went through a downturn, the RDLC lost 30 businesses. Never happened to us previously. 30 businesses, and they were all to a business, to a man, to a CEO. They were businesses who were headed up by the major breadwinner. So the CEO was the major breadwinner for that organization. They might have had 6 or 7 relationships. They might have had 5 or 6 staff. The minute there was a downturn and they lost, some cases 100%, most cases 50% of their customers, they found it very difficult to run their business, and they were, shoe-strapped. Having a BD person is absolute gem-like within your organization. One, you can do it with an existing 360 business. Now, that's how we did it at S3. We imported some grey-haired wonder cats who came from outside of sector, who were grown-up business people, because we can teach them recruitment. What we couldn't do is teach recruiters how to be more sophisticated salespeople and have the patience to do a 6-week lead time with multiple calls, just to every day, every week, get slightly closer to a business saying yes on something which is higher value. The second part of it was, because we were winning more business, we were able to say no more often. So we weren't always just taking on any business. The important element that we learned very young, that you have to have a QA, so quality assurance process, so that every time, so we gave our BD people absolutely carte blanche. They could go to any organization at any level where we've done any business at all, as well as brand new business, and leverage that relationship. The fact that we've done some business, we've obviously got the right to trade and whatever they could bring out of it. But not all business was good business. So there had to be some director intervention to say, yes, that's good, or no, it's not. That's too cheap. That's not enough. It also meant that we had layers of contact within every organization, so that if Dave got run under by a bus or got COVID-4, this time it's really ugly. If somebody didn't do well or left, and then they thought to take that account with them, we had director talking director, we had BD talking to the C-suite as well. We had our hiring manager, our delivery billing managers speaking to their hiring managers. So no one person actually owned any of those accounts. And we could always get a second opinion. And it was just a really, 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 really easy way to turn up performance. So if you think about your key driver at the moment, which hopefully, if you're looking at baselines and you're all doing your budgets for next year, if you're doing 1.5 to 2 deals ahead, by having a really good BD function on the top of whatever you do, it will instantly impact your bottom line. And also a really good BD person, just to give you an indication of what I would expect them to deliver for you. If it was someone doing tech into the US, it would be something in the region of $4 million a year as a target. One BD person for 10 senior sales and submission recruiters. That person would be then responsible for $333,000 a quarter. So quarter, which is effectively over the space of a quarter. If your average deal value is 30 grand, it's 11 deals, which is what, 3/4 bundles, average bundles on perm, probably 2 SOWs. That's not a lot to expect, but actually when it comes down to it, that's 4 million. If I'm nicking 30% off of what I'm paying my recruiters, off of 4 million, it's 1.3 million. I'm probably paying them $150,000 plus £150,000 bonus. That's 300 grand. I've just made myself 900 grand, and that'll pay for a holiday and a pair of shorts. Right? It's a really easy way to scale up your business and make it super profitable. Love this model.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Third model that we need to discuss is our 11120. So the classic American sales model, if you like. If we're going to talk about the pros here, this is ultimate specialism. Everyone had the lines of definition are so heavily drawn here. You have your SDR, for want of a better phrase, your lead generation specialist. You have your business development manager, your business development director who's knocking your solutions home. And you have your resources sales and submission person who's purely focused on that. Once again, as in the 180 model, the model lends itself to bundles and growth. What it also allows is more freedom of movement for the good people in your business. So your SDR can gravitate towards being your business development director. Your SDR can gravitate towards sales and submission if they find that SDR is not for them. Sales and submission can gravitate through those other roles. So what you're doing is you're presenting multiple career paths to people, which should improve your attrition as long as you're hiring and inducting the people properly. In terms of the cons, The challenge is if one piece breaks, it all breaks. So you've got that third throat to choke, which effectively, if one of your areas is misfiring, it causes a challenge into the other two because they are heavily reliant on one another. That's why it's called the pod system, right? Your hiring strategy becomes even more complex, and you as a leader, depending on the internal infrastructure that you have and depending on the support that you have as a leader, you now have 3 different types of people to lead. And excuse me, there's a typo there. So therefore, which means an increase in your own leadership team if your infrastructure is not good enough to allow you to manage these 3 different types of roles and still be light touch in terms of your own time, which of course will allow you to work on the business rather than in it. Gigi, anything to add on this one?
I just don't like the fact that one of the hardest roles is actually to get an engagement with the customer. I just don't like having all those multiple layers. I much prefer use tech over talent at the front end. If I was doing 120, 120, 120, it would be BD, sales and submission, and then having remote resource teams. I think that makes it, and I understand how SaaS businesses operate. Look, I just wrote it down here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but BD to QA to sales and submission to remote resources back to sales and submission, and that person does a mixture of a billing manager role, an account management role, and 360 opportunities at the back of it. So I understand the gig about giving people career opportunities, but I think at the moment people come into recruitment to make money. So all I want to do is build and create an environment where people can earn the most money they could ever possibly dream of, and that generally means that people won't want to leave. So if we can tick that box, everything else takes care of itself. But it's I'm not a big.
No, mate. To finish, my recommendation is the double 180. My recommendation moving forward, Gary, would be similar to yours, and we haven't spoken beforehand, so we can agree on this, right? How does it look? Me, on the front end, our business development director, they're not someone that runs processes for us. They're focused on meeting solutions and revenue. In terms of the type of person that we would be hiring, we're no longer hiring, and I'm going to generalize here, so you'll have to excuse me, but I have to give you some kind of generalistic approach, some kind of demographic, some kind of profile of the type of person we're looking for. We're looking for that person who is more experienced. We're looking for that person who would be very, very comfortable engaging with the C-suite very early on in their career with us. Gary, I think you mentioned it earlier. We're talking about grown-ups here. We're talking about archetypically people perhaps in their late 20s. Their whole career has been in sales, and that's what they've done. Okay. On the back end of our double 180, we're talking about. I cannot get my head around why we're asking people to do clicky, clippy, typey, datery in today's world. Our seats are costing us between £8,000 and £12,000 a month, depending on whether we own our building and where our business is. I cannot for the life of me understand why we're letting people use mouses rather than telephones to add data to anything at all. So for me, the whole of that first part of the process should be outsourced. Now, there are several opportunities for us to outsource. Gary's got a tech stack he can talk to you about, which is a very, very strong one. My people on the back end are purely tasked with the qualification, the relationship of brilliant people, and therefore building relationships with brilliant people that we can use for our requirements and our bundles today and tomorrow. They're also going to be tasked with some lead generation and running process. Their journey of travel is perhaps into account director, where effectively they'll have responsibility over a whole account P&L. So we want to keep those people. We don't particularly want that department to be transitional, only to be journeying north in terms of that person's career progression. So my recommendation throughout these models would be the double 180 that looks something like that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my last piece of content today. I'll hand it over to you guys from here on in. And of course, I'm here to answer any questions or to add any other colour that Gary and Dean perhaps might be want to discuss.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what Dean thinks, because we're all quite opinionated on this one.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. We were talking about it earlier, when I run my business, which was a temp business, we won more contracts than anybody else in our space, and we kind of wrapped product around it and went out and sold. And it's kind of a reverse funnel for us. There was 360 at the top, there was BD down the side, so everybody's doing BD. 360 fed into BD. That gave you information on who was doing what. They would be selling the ad hoc stuff that we see all the time, the 1s and 2s, 3s and 4s, but also retainers in terms of if they're winning bits of business to find high level people. We'd bring that down into the 180, and that's when we did the SOWs, kind of the project task stuff, where we had what we called the teaching accounts, where we ran these accounts on projects to hire in high volume, did it across the world for some large independent educators, and then brought it back down into a heavy 120 team, which is because we were selling bundles and ours was temp business. It is just that high level of servicing, getting those in. And we Gary talks about the targets. Obviously, we're working with schools, so saying it's got to be a minimum of 4 or 5 million quid would have been tough for us. But they had minimums of 10 schools that were producing about 48 to 50 grand a year in terms of margin for us. So each one was about 500,000 quid, but in reality, we were winning local authorities, we were winning 60, 70 schools at a time, and then servicing all of those, increased the thresholds, and everybody was doing, kind of moved from 180 to 120 because some of those roles moved. So we had kind of a reverse funnel, but all along the way, we used to have the information highway, which was information coming from 360, information coming from 180, back feeders in terms of the BD, and the 120 in terms of what they were doing, and we would just feed that back in to go and leverage to win more projects. And I think another big thing that was a great sales tool for us is that every single thing we did in terms of a project, task, SOW, we had white papers that were written in stages across the whole project. So every time we got to a point of hitting a critical success factor and getting paid, they had to give us a reference point. So at that point in that chunk of that contract, they had to tell us how well we've done, mainly because we're in the public sector. If you complete a contract, do really well, and you turn around, we did it in turnarounds of areas that were given notice to improve, to put them on what was a run rate for good, they'd take it in-house and go, right, we did this, and the private sector, and if it failed, blame us. If it was successful, they'd take it. So we would then get all of those success points and those references, and that would help us leverage new business. And actually, at the end of those, if you write them up as contracts and you're delivering on them, you can sell the contract. I've sold contracts for £250,000, just the terms of the contract as well. So slightly different in our market, but not a lot different. But yeah, we still had that vein running through.
Very good. I've got a question. It's a good one, Gary. I'm going to hand it over to you because I think you've already alluded to it. It's John Lugston has said, would you pay the BDM on every deal with a client once they have bought them on, or would you give revenue on that client for maybe 6 months and then lose the revenue to keep them hungry for new clients?
Neither.
Right.
Madness. So grown-up salespeople typically own a target. So I would only pay these people on a bonus. So effectively, they own a target, about a quarterly bonus. So typically in the UK, starting point for someone at the right caliber is 50, 60, 70K. That's what you want to be paying. So I actually think they're slightly older in terms of demographic. 35-year-old person who's got a real success in selling solutions, it is going to be your huckleberry, and they can double that. So in UK, Europe, 50, 60, 70K times 2 if they get 100% of their target. In the US, it's just different. So the numbers are just eye-watering. You're probably talking 100, 150,000 US times 2. But the targets, that it kind of matches. So effectively, I'm going to nick 30% before I pay my consultants. It pays for itself handsomely. But people are happy to work towards a target and a goal. And I pay them quarterly because it just doesn't happen in months. It's a longer lead time to get the quality of business that you're after. Also, if they go out in front of a customer and they win a 1 or a 2, I'll buy them a donut, but I ain't going to get paid on it because they failed. The idea is that they go out and sell a solution and they take it out of the public domain. We want all of their business. So if people keep coming back and say, yeah, I've got 2 roles here, what do I get paid? It's just like, I'm not paying for failure. Go back and win something else. So you don't, and also you should only pay on the project. So you pay on one specific project. So if it's for 30 people for Project Concord that's based in Washington, now that's a brilliant project. They don't own the customer, but that revenue, once it's signed up, you pay on fee generation. So if half of it's paid up front, then that's absolutely fine. That all goes into their pot for that quarter. And if there's any extra revenues, it goes into the pot for that quarter. They can always play catch up. So if they miss quarter 1, quarter 2, but in quarter 3, they catch up with, it's supposed to be year to date, you pay all that money that they would have got. So they can actually play catch up. But no one should own an account. As with Dean and I, we joke about this. Dean won a brilliant piece of business at the time. I didn't realize how good it was, but at the time, that opportunity was too big for one person. So I said, you can have that project, but we're nicking the rest of that account. We're going to give it over to major accounts. But you can have that project because you won that. And then we were quite bloody minded about that because we wanted people to go back in and continue selling. I want my BD people who are everybody in this room is supposed to be a King Arthur. You've got your best BD and salespeople are your Lancelots. You send your Lancelots out to fucking kill the dragon. All right, so go and kill that dragon. And then they come back, get massive round of applause. They don't survive on the fact there might be 10 more dragons turn up next week. And he goes, yeah, but I killed one last week. So that's a really random analogy. But we want our best salespeople, our Lancelots out there, just killing dragons for fun, week in, week out. And they just don't own an account. We used to do a 3-month rule. So if I won't win a piece of business and give it to Ross, which is that account, if Ross goes back and wins another piece of business, from that piece of business, it rolls on for another 3 months. If, however, you don't win any new business with that account then goes back into the mush pit, and we expect our BD people to start the process again. If you don't do it, we'll make sure it gets done. So there has to be weights and measures. There has to be quality assurance. You have to be looking at all the data all the time. This is one of those things that if you get this right and it's part of your DNA and you want to open up new business, great pieces of new business all the time, you don't let people sit on their laurels and say, I've opened up IBM. That should be it for life now. Bullshit. One account, 3 months, and then the rest of it goes to the public domain.
Next question, Joe Rothwell. Joe, do you think you could transition a strong 360 consultant to BD? And as a secondary question, would you?
Well, I don't, and I wouldn't.
I'm going to disagree with that, actually, because I think it's dependent on the person. I don't think we can be that general. I think if you've got a particularly good 360 consultant that understands the value of proper business development, we absolutely could.
If you've been good 360, you understand the job of hard knocking sales. You do move into a BD role. I was a 360 consultant, and although I set up the business, I kind of moved into my initial BD role, and then we'd win all these accounts and then bring people on, bring my directors on to take over and kind of introduce. I enjoyed doing it as well. So I think the transition's probably an easier one than taking someone from 120 or 180 and trying to make them BD.
The reason I say so as well is that every single person on this call has probably been responsible for winning big pieces of business, and they all started out as 360 consultants. And
now they're all running their own companies, right? We're in a rarefied atmosphere, the top of the pinnacle. These are the best of the best of the best. The thing is, I've never seen someone understands the dynamic, the commercial realities of saying you've generated 4 million quid, but all you're paying me is 120 grand a year. when they're saying, if I did that as a recruiter, I'd be sitting there pretty much getting a third of that. I'd be on £1 million a year. It's like, good luck. Just won't happen. And you don't want to have that animosity or fight within the business. And also, I think it's a very strong lyric to say, we buy in absolute experts. These are the strongest people that money can buy.
So then what we are saying,
and they've also gone through fantastic training. So we have people from Yellow Pages, from Orange, from Pitney Bowes, from Xerox, and these guys were just unbelievably good, and they taught us so much. So if it's someone who's recruitment going into that, as opposed to having a team of BD people who have got different life experiences, they know how to put proposals together, they know how to nudge deals down the line. They brought so much experience to us. It was game changing.
Okay.
It's worth looking on YouTube when I interviewed Richard Banks, and he used to talk about quite a lot of back me or sack me. and I gave him a target every year. Not once did he hit it. So I said, here's 5 accounts. I'd like you to win 2 of those. Never did. But he generated so much revenue from so many different places and was so valuable. I never not paid him 100% more was due. It was unbelievably strong.
We need to be fairly sharp on our answers here. So this is a question from Jack. Jack, if you're transitioning business to 180, would you keep anyone in 360 roles, i.e. principals? I'm guessing MC stands for managing consultant, who are billing well.
I think the starting point is you don't change anything. In this market, don't change anything. Add BD. Add BD, and if you're getting to a point where your people look like they're saturated in terms of work, one, make sure your quality assurance process starts saying no more often to shitty opportunities, and 2, you build out your extended remote resourcing teams so that you can keep up with long listing to short listing, so you can drive business improvement. So don't just say, right, your BD, your delivery or resourcing, just don't do it. It's nuts. Just build out BD first. Okay.
Good. This is a question from Grant. Do you pay on the project/business if not on the delivery, i.e. you pay the BD person on bringing the business in, not the pounds actually delivered? Grant, I might need a bit of clarity on this question, mate.
No, I think I answered that.
Yeah.
So they're paid a bonus on what they generate through the door. You nick 30% off of what you pay your sales and submission team. And if you use remote resources, nick another 10%.
Grant, if you're happy with that answer, mate, just give us a shout or perhaps rephrase that question for us, mate. Mark Bracknell, what would you do if you believe the model could work, but your current consultants enjoy the diversity of 360?
I love the way that people care about people. Last time I go to work to make a few quid. I want to run a business that's really successful. I'm not going to let the tail wag the fucking dog. We need to be generating more new business, and with what potentially is happening with the global economics, you know, some people just say, yeah, but I want to do a bit more BD. Well, you're shit at it. When was the last time you won more new business?
But Gary, I think you've already answered it anyway, where you suggested that it's not necessarily about change, it's about addition. It's about adding to what you've already got. It's about adding difference to what you've already got. It's not necessarily about changing what you've already got. It's about adding another layer in, right? That's what you've suggested in your. You just got to make
your business as the best it can possibly be. You know, and if some people say, I just don't really like not being able to do this, it's tough.
This is a fairly long one here. So this is from Chris Moylan. Chris, when winning large deals with big brands, Klarna, Deloitte, KPMGs, etc., if you are failing to deliver on a specific project, SOW or TAS, what are people doing with commercials? Invoice discount, rolling over hire, kicking the team, or outsourcing and subbing out the delivery? I'm confident we can sell and secure a large amount of business, but as a small team, we sometimes have struggled to deliver on clear, concise delivery plan for some of these projects. Do we just discount the charge to keep the skin in the game? So I think
I
Chris
thought,
is looking for us. Chris is looking to present himself as perhaps a larger business as he is to
can
win.
I thought we were after questions, not short stories.
That was tough. That was tough for me to read, by the way. That was yeah.
But first things first, win everything you can. If it's an SOW, there's no interviews in that process anyway, and it's really easy to get hold of contracts. So you 100% you'll fulfill that, right? So take that out of the equation. If it's a bundle on perm, make sure you can deliver it, and make sure you've got the capability and scale with your remote teams to put everyone works 7 days a week. Like, everyone do what is required to get the job done. I used to go in and help people if they had big projects on. I gladly gave up my time at weekends to make sure that people were working when I didn't get paid for it and I wasn't a boss. So, we have a really decent work culture. You've got to say no. And if you're winning bundles, it's within your remit to say when it triggers and when it starts. So you don't have to be, you're supposed to be negotiating commercially and just say, 100% we can deliver that. I'd like to give you a 6-week head start. The reason is that, for us internally, fuck me, I haven't got resource capability. The reason externally to the customer, I like to do the warm up and get the machine running to actually do all of the talent pooling, and I want to do all of that work before you pay me a penny. So I want to trigger this in 6 weeks' time, right? It's just been street smart about when you do this stuff, and it doesn't matter who the customer is. You haven't got reputation damage. No one gives a shit. It's just about being commercially savvy. I've never not delivered. That's a lie. I think we fucked up a few times. It's only because we took our eye off the ball, or we said yes to a deal that we shouldn't have said yes to.
It's the loveliest first world problem you're ever going to have.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, Grant. Grant's come back and said, what I meant was, do you pay the BD person a bonus on the business they bring in, or in the business that they've delivered on, i.e. money actually in the bank?
Money in the bank.
So they obviously had a remit on what the contracts were in terms of the size of the contracts. So if they went below a certain level, then there was no money at all in it for them. But I would pay them a small tickle on the signing of the contract so that they carried on to push it through, to make sure the contract was signed and it was agreed and we got the lawyers. Was that part can slow down a whole process, especially if they want to sandpit something and you want to get them legally working to your tune. So once that's all done and the contract's signed and we've agreed terms, success factors, going back to whether you can deliver or not, we would really micro down the client's responsibility in terms of whatever process, if it's SOW or TAS, whatever we were doing. And you would generally find, if you're not delivering on something, you could find something that was the client's fault. But the whole process, if you do find you struggle to deliver, the fact that you've taken on management of the contract means you can outsource parts of it anyway if you had to. And we did. We had teams underneath, not that we ever used them, we could always deliver, but we always made sure that we had an outsourcing unit on there, chucked them a bit now and then just to keep them interested. But yeah, so it's not for everyone, but I would pay on getting the contract signed to make sure that it was levels. And then when we'd onboarded and we were getting the revenue that we should be doing on the right run rate, then they got their money, not afterwards, not before.
Okay, we've got one more question, and this is from Claire Nixon. How do you stop your BD team from bringing in clients, delivery expectations that the delivery team don't want to sell to the market or can't meet?
That's why you have a QA process. That's why you have a director to say, is it good business? Is it business we want? Can we deliver it? And if the director says yes, then it's no one's choice. We have to make this. We have to make this work. So it's all of these things fail without having a QA process and director accountability and ownership.